Hey everyone, welcome. You're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin. I'm very grateful that you are watching this video and watching this stream because I decided to talk about that it's time for me to start speaking about things that are important in English, more so than I have perhaps done before, because I feel like the situation it cannot be delayed and put off any further. The situation almost demands more action, and I feel like through recent conversations, it became more apparent to me that these conversations need to happen more and more often in English because they need to reach audiences that need to hear this information in English. Because when this is people who agree with each other, who share this information in Russian, and yet the decision makers are not speaking Russian, they're speaking English, then it's important to reach the decision makers and speak English. Now, who are the decision makers? Well, it's us, it's you, it's me, it's those that live in the United States, those that are able to vote in the United States, and those that, frankly, are citizens of other democracies that are part of coalition to stand against Russian aggression in Ukraine. Those are the decision makers, and this conversation needs to happen more and more often in English, and so it will be. It is. Let me first, I guess, say a couple of words about myself to introduce myself pretty briefly. There are other videos where I talk at more length about myself, but bottom line is my name is Yuri Rashkin. It is my real name. And I'm originally from Moscow, Russia. I was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Союз Советских Социалистических Республик. There used to be a country like that, and it consisted of 15 republics. And I happened to live in the best city in the world, in Moscow. As far as I was concerned, it was one of the best places in the world. I mean, I've never been anywhere else. So I was educated to be a musician. I lived in a very privileged part of town near a place called Patriarch Pond. The windows of my apartment overlooked the Patriarch Pond. If this means something to you, great. If it doesn't mean anything to you, the point is this was like old town Moscow, and I really could see Kremlin out of our windows, kind of barely, a little bit far, but there it was. And so, with that kind of an approach, um, when I was 13, we left Russia. We left Soviet Union because my parents were able to do so. We were Jewish, are Jewish. My parents were, I still am, but this is ethnic, not religious. I know it's confusing for some of you. I apologize. I will clarify this later, but ethnicity is not the same as religion. I know in America anybody can be a Jew, but in Soviet Union it was a special, what is the opposite of privilege that people had. But it also allowed them to apply to immigrate from Soviet Union. So that's what my parents did during this was Gorbachev time. They were able to do so, and we left. Because we were able to do so, because my parents wanted to leave Russia for a long time, because I think that they were the kind of people who did not want to live in a dictatorship. I'd like to hope that I make them proud. And we came to the United States, and life moved on. We lived in the state of Utah, I don't know what it is, state of Utah for a long time. Now I live in the state of Wisconsin. The Rock County, Wisconsin is my home, Beloit, where I am honored and privileged to actually serve as a local elected official, working on the local level, so to say, and participating in the democracy. So it's amazing. And lately, how did this happen? How did this come about? My father passed away in 2013. After that, seeking for some more opportunities to frankly speak Russian, because I kind of like speaking Russian, but I always lived away from Russian community on purpose. I found there's way that I could do this is by hosting a podcast. I could talk to great people. It's really just the best of the best. And so I enjoyed building my channel where people could speak freely, a YouTube channel called Rashkin Report. And it grew, and cut a fairly long story fairly short. Uh, at this point, I find myself being invited on Ukrainian TV and Ukrainian news outlets and Ukrainian YouTube channels where they interview people about what is going on in the world right now, kind of providing our analysis, geopolitical analysis. I don't know why they talk to me. I mean, I am who I am. I know what I know, but I don't live in Washington, D.C., although I am a local elected official, and I hold a progressive point of view, which I think makes me both unique and more realistic when it comes to understanding how American politics tends to work. And so both of those qualities have prepared me for some, in some way to talk about American politics, which is a topic I love. I think American politics is the coolest thing in the world. Like to me, politics is like sports and theater, like rolled into one. So you have like the theatrical production aspect of this, but then you have the final score. You don't have like this was a good production. You go, this was a winning production. This was not a winning production. So it's a nice way to kind of determine which show, was best among many other things. And it's a great way to have a communication process in a democratic society. I mean, this is great. So I like to talk about it, and now I'm almost daily on speaking to people in Ukraine or really Russian people all over the world who may be consuming that media, because a lot of people basically ran away from Russia. Like, really, anybody who considered themselves a decent person with the means to do so, which is not everybody, but those that had the means, left Russia really in droves about a year and a half ago. And so there's a lot of Russian speakers. There's the Russian diaspora growing, Russian speaking, Russian. There's always a question, because Russian does not mean ethnically Russian. Are we speaking about Russian speaking? Are we talking about the holders of the Russian passport? I had no idea, because you see, when I left, we just surrendered the passport. That was just something we did. We said, you have to get this permit and this permission and to leave Soviet Union. And my parents paid 500 rubles per each of us to surrender our citizenship. And wow, what's that? Money well spent. Because now you have these poor people from Russia who are no longer in Russia, who cannot get rid of the citizenship, because if I'm not mistaken, you have to go back to Russia to fully get rid of it. And that's kind of hard right now. So here I am speaking about American politics. And what do I talk about? I talk about how United States supports Ukraine, how we are going to be there for as long as it takes, that we are, there's no kind of, basically I repeat a lot of State Department talking points because nobody else does. And I also like read news and then I talk about it. And so I end up repeating a lot of things that Anthony Blinken says. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Like, this is a real thing. This was not just imagined. This is a real policy that American government is maintaining. And those kinds of things. So really, I don't feel like I'm doing any kind of rocket science or brain surgery or brain science or rocket surgery. Neither. But I speak Russian, and I am, and they keep inviting me. So I keep saying yes, because you know what? They're under aggression, and Russian attacks are horrendous. And if I can provide a little bit of clarity in that situation to people and explain what, that the world is not, the situation is not as bad as it seems. Because I can only imagine when people are in shelters, when bomb attacks are happening, and then news is filled with anti-American rhetoric. with just all sorts of information about how there's a secret plan between Biden and Putin, how secretly America is planning on pulling out, how in secret we're going to betray Ukraine because we already sold Ukraine out in many different ways. And in fact, we even have, this is like a really vast like conspiracy, not in the sense that it's, I don't know how widely it is embraced, but it is, there's like levels to it, because there's also, then you have Jake Sullivan, advisor, national security advisor, who plays a part in this, because he is like talking to Kremlin, and so is director CIA Burns, because Sullivan, first of all, he said the main problem is China and not Russia, so we're already suspicious of him. And director of CIA Burns, who is really are trying to talk to Putin and try to negotiate something with Putin behind our backs. And this is such a secret, big secret, that you have people talking about it on YouTube day in and day out, and those videos gather millions of views because people want to know, because people are living in a war situation. Here comes Yuri Rashkin, and I say, in a nice, pleasant voice, that administration and American people are supporting Ukraine, and we're going to be with Ukraine as long as it takes, because it is important for our national security. It's important for our reputation in the world. It's important for all those things that we stand for, that we cannot, let Ukraine fail. It is extremely important for us. Right? 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 I mean, would you, leave a comment if you disagree? And of course, being I will kind of take a step aside and acknowledge that there is a fantastic diversion of opinion about what is liberal, what is conservative in Russia and the United States, and what is good about nationalism, and what is good about interventionism, and who benefits from these policies and who doesn't, and who pays for them. And it's a big, fantastic conversation that can be had. But because Russian community overall is extremely conservative, and therefore feels it is aligned usually with the Republican Party, there is a really strong cognitive dissonance there, because you have a lot of people who support Ukraine because they're from Ukraine or from Russia, and they understand that the war is unjust, and they support Ukraine. And then and they hate Putin, but then they also love Donald Trump. And then they get this like confusion, because how can Donald Trump be saying bad things about their wonderful Ukraine? Because surely Donald Trump means good things, because they feel that he's strong, he's macho, he can show Vladimir Putin who is the real, bully. I don't know. And so what's going on here? It's very confusing. There must be some kind of, again, a secret plan between the Democrats, and so there's this strong bias, and then you have justification of this bias, and that's the media. And again, I show up and say pretty bland things, in my opinion. Well, I mean, I say some things about Vladimir Putin, who I really hold in low regard as a human being. And it's always a nice opportunity to say a few choice, adjectives about a dictator who's responsible for kidnapping tens of thousands of children, general genocide, warfare, and destruction, being the greatest threat to his own country. So Vladimir Putin is somebody that I enjoy saying, really kind of nasty things about. I mean, it's a hobby. So here I am in the United States, being all brave and stuff, right? So now that I see what's going on in DC, and I'm not in DC, I'm in Wisconsin, rural practically area. I mean, Rock County is roughly 160,000 people. Beloit is roughly 35,000 people. Nearby Janesville is roughly 65,000 people. I mean, these are, we're far away from the events. But from here, that looks like there's some dysfunction in Washington, D.C. And for me, it's extremely worrying because I'm already finding myself in a position of explaining that, yes, I said that America will support and stay for as long as it takes, but now we have, a good day for Vladimir Putin in American Congress. It is what it is. Because there's pretty direct connections between people. Really, when you don't have to think too hard about this, and this was a good day for Vladimir Putin. And it's hard because I try to provide like hope, which I feel is much more needed and appreciated and in short supply. And it is hard for me to have hope looking at what is going on in DC right now. And I just want to, right now, I think without going into too many details about what has happened there, because there's some fantastic podcast, TV shows that people watch and I watch to learn about what's going on. But I think right now we have all these, the Congress, House of Representatives, they were all, sent to their districts because I guess it got really emotional there in DC and almost like came time to like fists. And having served serving in local government, I can see how a situation can get intense, so I can understand that. Just in general, emotional intensity of a gathering of elected officials. But now is opportunity for us as people to meet these elected officials wherever they are in the districts, like Representative Brian Stiles, that's my representative. So, or our senators, in Wisconsin, we have Senator Tammy Baldwin, and we also have Senator Ron Johnson. So I think that we should use our energy in a way to convey to our public officials that this is very, very important, because I feel, and correct me if you feel this is wrong, but reputation of our country really does depend on this. We have really went out on a limb for somebody saying that we're going to protect democracy. I know this is like really expensive. But frankly, if it goes beyond money, it can get really more costly, in my opinion. Right now, we're still at the level of just money, and a lot of money of our taxpayers, and I'm one of us. So I think with understanding of all of this, this is really crucial, because really it's democracy, it's our reputation, but also it's our national security. Because if Ukraine falls, then we have Taiwan, that we are very likely to actually start, getting involved militarily, and then the costs escalate dramatically and very fast. And I think then after that, and I think that's what we hear from a lot of our military analysts, who say that we're then going to look at a world that's just not going to respect world order that we've had since World War II, and we're going to have the right of the strong. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, is the really critical point here, because what we're dealing with is this entirely different set of ethics. We have values and standards that are different between our, I don't know, civilizations on some level, because we're looking at a society that's been in some way damaged, traumatized, broken. I'm speaking of like Russia and post-Soviet Union territory, where there's a lot of respect for strength and a lot of fear of being perceived as weak. And the only defense of the weak sometimes is to be wicked. That is very different world than what we live in, where we try to do good things and we try to avoid doing bad things whenever we can. It's not about strength and weakness. It's about what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do. And we are dealing with a fundamental clash here of values, which is really important to consider when we're thinking about what's at stake here, and what are the consequences. Because if Russia is perceiving us as being weak, and they definitely perceive us now as being vulnerable, then it's going to increase the costs involved in restating the understanding that the United States is the top dog in the world. And that brings me to the conversation about whether the US should be the world policeman. That is something that I find myself just baffled by the response that I get, because I live in the world of really, progressive people who feel that, military is a last resort. And we don't want to be a world policeman. It's expensive. It's costly. People die. Americans die, and most civilized, I would think, people would not want their uh, fellow citizens, fellow defenders to die for. I mean, come on. Um, on the other hand, we've had politicians in the White House who were much more aggressive about using that American strength in ways which have really affected a lot of people. Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, list goes on. And and that track history that's been created has been also, on one hand, it created a reputation. And inside the United States, it created, I feel, a reputation that we get involved often for the wrong reasons, and often, usually, always with unpredictable results, with heavy costs, scars, veterans. I mean, we really, I am so proud of how we try to take care of our veterans. And as a chair of Veterans and Education Services, Education and Veteran Services Committee for Rock County, I am just impressed with what can be done and how local government can actually work to increase like number of people using its services. It is so awesome, because we're like looking for ways to get people more services, but it is a cost. And if you're on the inside, you're saying maybe we should be very careful about this, very using this very precious resource, our people, right? Our most precious resource. But from the other point of view, there's people who go, hey, America has a reputation of going out there and fixing things, trying, not being afraid to use its strength. Why is this important? Because we're talking about society where strength is everything. So whenever we show that strength, they go, you can do it. We know you can do it. Now, can you do it over here, please, in the way that would help us? And that is a perennial challenge that we face. So what I want to say is that we may not, it may be it's some people's interests that we are a world policeman. It may be in some people's interest that we are not world's policemen, or policewoman for that matter, police officer. So but reality is that we are dealing with pretty much an existential crisis, because we have a country that's going to keep pushing, and it's going to really try to undermine the world that we live in and change it into the world that we can't predict. It's kind of similar to Washington, D.C. right now, but really this is direction we're headed in, and the direction we need to kind of pull back as quickly as possible. And it's going to come from us citizens meeting with our elected officials and reminding them that they need to get their stuff together. And Washington, D.C., they need to support Ukraine, because Ukraine is a democracy, but Ukraine is also an integral part of our national security. And they need to work to restore respect for the United States that needs to exist in this world, for this world to be a better place. And if that makes me come out as an interventionalist, or if it comes, that's the world we live in. And sometimes we have to, almost review the positions we have taken before. And in this situation, I feel like our United States Armed Forces and our, are crucial in protecting us like never before. Never before have I been as grateful to our armed forces as I am now. It's just incredible that we live in the United States. And so that's what I want to leave us and you with, dear audience, today. We are, as far as the world is concerned, lucky to the extent we cannot imagine, understand, or even believe. We live in the United States. We're citizens. Those of us that are citizens of the United States, that is a next level up, because living in the United States is already a victory. But being a citizen of the United States, that puts us in a very special, unique category of people in this world with the influence that pretty much nobody else possesses, because of the power of our country and ability of our country to make influence in this world. It gives us as voters, as stakeholders, incredible opportunity and responsibility. And so I hope that you will use your power to do some good. On that note, thanks very much for listening, and press like if you haven't yet, and come back to this channel for more commentary on this crazy world in English and in Russian. You're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin. Take care.